A hunter came through the door urgently. He was sweating and hyperventilating. "Cabo," he said, barely able to catch his breath. "Eli is missing." The hunters had been collecting the deceased from the battleground, and the revelation that Eli was missing was not something Cabo could take lightly. "What do you mean, missing?" "I delivered the final blow myself," Cabo said. "Yes, but there's a trail. It leads to the forest." "Well, did you follow it?" "Yes, I did. And it seems there are also horse tracks at the edge of the forest." Cabo considered this information carefully. Eli had escaped, but how could that be? How could he have survived the final blow Cabo had dealt him? Lowering his voice, serious and dripping with disdain, Cabo said, "Find that snake and finish him." The hunter nodded and left, determined to find Eli and report back to Cabo, or if possible, to end what Cabo had started. This news threatened to ruin everything. Cabo could not let it be known that one snake person could face a hunter and live. Such a reputation would tarnish his standing. Even worse, the leader of the snake people surviving was more serious than anything. It suggested the snake people were more resilient than he had thought. If word spread, they could rise from the ashes like a phoenix. Cabo could not let that happen. Changing his mind, he turned to his second-in-command and said, "I have a hunt to complete. Make sure the building and the disposal process are done diligently. I will be back." You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. The hunters arrived back, their steps heavy despite their victory. Though they had succeeded in their mission, their faces told a story of unease and uncertainty. Zoro, the elder of the tribe and Tendai's proud grandfather, approached them with a mix of curiosity and anticipation. He had been waiting to hear how the hunt had gone, and was especially eager to hear about Tendai's performance on his first hunt. "Sia! Tendai!" Zoro called out warmly, his voice carrying across the gathering. "Welcome back. I'm glad to see you both alive. Did everything go well?" As Zoro studied their faces, he noticed something was wrong. The weight in their expressions didn't match the triumph he expected. Trying to lighten the mood, he added with a chuckle, "Well, the boy is still in one piece. How bad could it have been?" Sia nodded, managing a faint smile. "It went well, and Tendai truly outdid himself." "Then why the long faces?" Zoro asked, his tone growing serious. He scanned the group, searching for an answer. Sia hesitated before turning to his son. "Tendai?" he prompted gently, hoping he would share his thoughts. But before Tendai could respond, Zoro interjected with a grin. "Sia, I know the young man did us proud," Zoro said, clapping a hand on Tendai's shoulder. "Tendai, you might even be as good as your grandfather someday." He let out a hearty laugh. "Maybe he'll even surpass you," Sia replied, his tone more solemn than celebratory. Tendai gave a faint smile but didn't linger. He quietly slipped away, his mind swirling with thoughts he couldn't yet put into words. Tendai was very skilled for his age, the best in his age group, and during practice sessions he had defeated some seasoned hunters. Zoro could often be heard on the sidelines shouting, "Take it easy on them, Tendai," pride brimming over. Once Tendai was out of earshot, Sia leaned closer to Zoro, lowering his voice. "Father, we need to talk about Tendai. There's something troubling me." "What could possibly trouble you about Tendai?" Zoro asked, his pride in Tendai unwavering. Sia exhaled deeply. "He fought well, yes, but maybe he fought too well." Zoro frowned, confused. "What is fighting too well?" he whispered. "It wasn't just skill," Sia explained, his voice tense. "The way he moved, the way he struck, there was something in him, something more than just the strength of a hunter. It was anger, father, but not the kind of anger that drives a hunter. This was deeper, darker." Zoro considered this for a moment before shrugging. "Maybe he carries more of our ancestors' spirits than we ever did. That could explain his strength." "No," Sia said firmly, shaking his head. "It's not that. In the forest, there was a snake person, one unlike the others. It said something to Tendai, something that seemed to strike a chord. I think he felt it, father, and I fear this is only the beginning." Zoro waved a dismissive hand, unwilling to let his son's fears darken the moment. "Seer, you've just returned victorious. A hunter has been born. Let us celebrate that, not cloud it with worries and riddles about snakes." "Father, I'm telling you, this isn't something we can ignore," Seer insisted. His voice dropped even lower. "Maybe it has something to do with the Guardian, with what happened in the forest. Tendai, he's connected to something bigger, something dangerous." Zoro's expression hardened. "Enough of this," he said sharply. "Talking about snakes will only stir trouble we don't need. Tendai is fine. Let the young man enjoy his success, and let us honor him as a new hunter." Seer nodded reluctantly, but the unease in his chest refused to fade. The memory of Tendai's fury, the cold precision with which he fought, and the rage that burned in his eyes, haunted him. He couldn't dismiss it, nor could he share it fully with his father. As Zoro joined the others to celebrate, Seer stood apart, his thoughts heavy. "I need to talk to him," he thought, staring into the distant firelight. "But where do I even begin?" The night was still, but Asa's mind churned with unease. Snake Island was shrouded in silence, the kind that hinted at danger lurking just beyond the shadows. The news of the hunter's resurgence had unsettled her people, their whispers of fear spreading across the camp. Asa stood at the edge of the cliff, her eyes fixed on the distant mountains. Somewhere out there, her people were still scattered, vulnerable, and the hunters were ending them, one by one. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. Her people had been through so much already, exiled from their lands, hunted like animals. Snake Island was supposed to be their sanctuary, a place to rebuild. But every step forward felt like dragging a boulder uphill. Behind her, the crunch of footsteps on gravel broke the stillness. Asa turned to see Palesa approaching, her expression grim. "The hunter's movements worry me, Palesa," Asa said, her voice low but steady. "They thin our numbers before we even have a chance to recover." Palesa nodded. "I heard about the recent attacks on a family. It keeps me awake too, my queen. But I've been thinking, there is something we can do." Asa raised an eyebrow, her curiosity mingled with a trace of hope. "What is it?" Palesa hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Do you remember how Snake Island began? How you went out there, braving danger, and convinced our people to come here, to believe in a future?" Asa's throat tightened at the memory, the sleepless nights, the dangers she'd faced, the lives she'd saved. "I remember." "We could do it again," Palesa said, her voice firm. "Go to the mountains, the caves, wherever our people are hiding. We bring them back before the hunters strike again. We rebuild our strength." The idea sparked a fire in Asa's chest. It was bold, it was dangerous, but it could work. She looked back at the mountains, imagining the scattered groups of snake people who still lived in fear, waiting for a leader to guide them to safety. Asa nodded slowly. "Then I'll go. I'll bring them back." "No," Palesa said sharply, her voice like a whip. "You can't." Asa froze. "What do you mean, I can't? If anyone should go, it's me." "You're the queen," Palesa said, her tone steady but urgent. "If you go and the hunters catch you, it's over. Snake Island falls. The people lose their leader, their hope. Without you, we have nothing." Asa's chest tightened. She hated the truth in Palesa's words. "So what do we do? We can't just wait here." "I'll go," Palesa said without hesitation. "I'll find them and bring them back." Asa opened her mouth to argue but stopped. The conviction in Palesa's voice was unshakable. And deep down, she knew Palesa was right. She hated the thought of sending someone else into danger, but the risk to her own life was too great. Asa stared at her, her heart sinking. Palesa had already been through so much. She had sacrificed more than anyone, carried wounds no one else could see. There were secrets in her past, painful ones. Asa knew about the child she'd lost, the hunter she had loved, and the marriage that had crumbled because of it all. Palesa was strong, but how much more could she take? "You've done enough, Palesa," Asa said, her voice soft but firm. "I can't ask this of you." "You're not asking," Palesa replied. "I'm offering, Because if you perish out there, Asa, it's all over. Let me do this." Asa swallowed hard, her throat dry. She wanted to argue, but the fire in Palesa's eyes stopped her. This wasn't just duty. It was something deeper, a resolve born from pain, from loss, from a fierce loyalty that wouldn't let her walk away. "Fine," Asa said quietly. "But be careful. The hunters are smarter than they've ever been." Palesa nodded once. "I'll leave at dawn." As Palesa walked away, disappearing into the shadows, Asa felt guilty. She hated standing still while others risked their lives. But Palesa was right. Her people needed her alive. And if anyone could succeed in this mission, it was Palesa. Asa stayed by the cliff, watching the mountains. Somewhere out there, her people waited, unaware of the storm that was coming. She prayed Palesa would find them in time, because if she didn't, there would be no one left to save. Nandi sat on the edge of Dialo's bed, her chest heaving as she struggled to catch her breath. Her fingers trembled, sweat trickling down her temples. She looked at him, desperation flickering in her eyes. "I should be out there, Dialo," she said, her voice barely audible. "I should be standing by my husband, not hiding away in here like a coward." Dialo leaned against the doorframe, his arms crossed, his gaze sharp. "Have you seen yourself, Nandi?" he asked. "You're in mid-transformation. Do you really think the hunters would let you walk free? They'd end you on sight, and don't think for a second they'd stop there. They'd investigate every aspect of your life, your kin, your bloodline, and then what? Do you think Django would survive that fallout? That's if he even makes it?" Nandi flinched at his words, the weight of their truth sinking into her. She clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms as she tried to steady her erratic breathing. Her husband's life was on the line, and here she was, trapped in this room, powerless. "I told you," Dialo continued, his voice dropping. "I told you not to marry him, but you never listen, do you, Nandi? You always have to defy reason, always have to follow your heart. You should have married one of our own, someone who shares our blood, someone who understands the truth about what we are." She shot him a glare, her voice trembling with anger and guilt. "I've been taking the pills, Dialo. I've been careful. I just forgot, okay? I forgot." "Forgot?" he said, his voice rising. "How could you forget something like this? Do you think the others haven't noticed? They may have smelled the shift in you, Nandi. Maybe they've dismissed it as the scent of the forest lingering on Django, but how much longer do you think that excuse will hold? You know what's at stake. This isn't just about you, this is about all of us." Nandi bit her lip, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. She hated how right he was, hated the way his words cut into her. "It's been hard, Dialo," she whispered. "These past few days, they've been impossible. You should understand that." Dialo's expression softened, but only slightly. "I do understand. But understanding doesn't make this less dangerous. Our secret is bigger than your grief, bigger than your guilt. If it gets out, it's the end of our lineage." Dialo moved to a small table near the corner of the room, retrieving a small bottle and a glass of water. He handed them to her, his face grim. "Take it," he said simply. She didn't argue. With shaking hands, she swallowed the pill and chased it with the water. A strange warmth spread through her body almost instantly. Her skin, once mottled with faint scales, began to smooth. The shimmer of transformation faded, and the unnatural glow in her eyes dimmed. She exhaled slowly, relief washing over her as she felt the snake within her subside, lulled back into dormancy by the suppressant. Dialo watched her carefully, his face a mask of stern concern. "You have to be more careful, Nandi," he said, his voice quieter now. "These pills don't just suppress the snake, they mask our scent. Without them, we're exposed." Nandi nodded, her throat too tight with emotion to speak. Dialo's gaze softened for a moment, pity flickering in his eyes as he looked at her. Dialo placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch firm but comforting. "Get through today," he said, "and we'll figure out the rest." Nandi sat in silence as Dialo left the room, the faint click of the door closing behind him echoing in her ears. She stared at her hands, still trembling, and tried to quiet the storm raging inside her. Outside, the hunters gathered, their voices a low murmur that seemed to rise with every passing moment. She knew what was coming. She knew what was at stake. And as much as she hated to admit it, she knew Dialo was right. One mistake could destroy everything. Her heart ached for Django, for Nala. And as the faint sound of the ceremonial drums began to echo through the corridors, she couldn't help but wonder if she had already lost everything. Samuel looked at Nala. She stood alone now, trembling, and his heart ached at the sight. Their relationship was complicated, but today was especially hard for her. He had seen Dialo earlier, swiftly taking Nandi away. Dialo had nodded to him to move closer to Nala to make sure their secret remained protected. Without a word, Samuel stepped forward and stood silently by Nala's side. When she looked up and saw him, her face lit up. Without hesitation, she embraced him. He didn't pull away. Instead, he held her, hoping his presence might give her some comfort. They looked at the screen. It was about to happen. Django had requested to face the fire alone, allowing no one else in the room. In the olden days, such a spectacle would have been witnessed by a group gathered in solemn silence. But Django, leader of the hunters, was granted his wish. As the others watched from a distance, wondering what would happen next, Django focused only on the sound of the flames. They crackled, but from where he stood, the heat didn't touch him yet. The room felt normal, yet his own anxiety made it feel unbearably hot. He whispered, "Goddess, you know my heart. You've seen my struggles, my choices, my mistakes. If I've failed my people, if I've betrayed the hunters in any way, then judge me. I'll accept your decision. But please, judge me fairly." His heart raced as his mind flashed to a memory. Him embracing Kwame, the two of them hugging as if they were father and son. The thought made him tremble. Would that be seen as betrayal? Would the goddess of the hunt tolerate such an act of tenderness? He had been so sure he would emerge alive from the fires of judgment. But now, doubt crept in. A voice crackled through the speakers, breaking the heavy silence. Monde spoke, his words clear and firm. "Django, the hunters are ready. Step into the fire." Django hesitated, though he knew he had to show strength to the very end. He wished Nala and Nandi weren't watching this. He didn't want them to see him fail. He didn't want his final memory to be one of shame. He wished he had been a better father, a better husband. He had tried his best, but leading the hunters had consumed him, always on duty, always giving orders. Maybe in another life he could have been more for them. But there was no time for regrets now. This was it. He had cherished his role as leader of the hunters, despite its burdens. Now, perhaps he would meet his brother Cabo on the other side. They might laugh and wrestle again, just as they had done before, even in the womb. With that thought, Django stepped into the flames. The goddess of the hunt watched silently. It was her move now. Django closed his eyes, surrendering his soul to the goddess. He waited for the fire to claim his flesh and release his soul to its maker, but he felt nothing. The fire wasn't hot. It was cold, almost soothing, like a gentle breeze. Outside, the hunters gasped as they watched the screen. Inside the fire, Django sensed another presence. He opened his eyes, startled. There, standing before him, was his brother. "Cabo," Django whispered, his voice trembling. Cabo smiled. "Brother, is this it? Am I gone? Is this what it feels like to be dead?" "No, brother," Cabo replied. "You're not dead. You're very much alive. The goddess has given you a third chance." Django knew the gravity of those words. A third chance was no ordinary gift. "Use it wisely, brother," Cabo said, his voice heavy with wisdom and authority. "You have favor with the goddess, more than you will ever know. Lead your people with wisdom and compassion." Django's heart ached as he looked at Cabo. He wanted to say so much, to apologize for every mistake, every wrong left unspoken. But before he could utter a word, Cabo began to fade, disappearing into the flames with a serene smile on his face. Django reached out, his hand grasping at nothing but air. He was alone again, the fire quiet around him. Left alone in the fire, Django took a deep breath and stepped out. He pushed the heavy door open, his hands trembling. When he looked up, the hunters outside had fallen to their knees in awe and fear. Django stood before them, his face calm but his eyes blazing with a quiet intensity. The fire had not consumed him. He was untouched. The hunters knew what this meant. From this moment forward, no one would dare question Django's place. He was the chosen one, favored by the goddess herself. And that, my dear tribe, wraps up yet another thrilling chapter in our Hunter and Snake People series. I hope you enjoyed the twists and turns of this episode. Cabo the Great has embarked on his mission to complete the hunt, determined to finish what he started. Meanwhile, Seer is caught in the throes of fatherhood, facing challenges that test his very soul. If you were in Seer's shoes, how would you handle such a situation? Palesa, ever bold, has stepped forward to lead her people to the mysterious Snake Island. We've also uncovered more about the snakes among the hunters, while Django, reborn from the celestial fires, begins an epic new journey. The drama intensifies and the stakes grow higher. What lies ahead for our heroes? Stay tuned for the next chapter. Things are only just beginning to heat up. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. A warm and heartfelt thank you to all the amazing tribe members who have chosen to join and support this incredible journey. Your belief in this channel means the world to me, and I'm so glad to have you along for the ride. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.